Everybody, welcome back to Leosophy. This is the last of the tea installment. This is about Puerh. And Puerh is one of my favorite teas. I know I say that probably every vid, because all varieties are good. But Puerh is really interesting. Puerh to me is, I like it more in the winter because most Puerhs have a very rich dark taste. They are the exact antithesis of green teas and white teas. In fact, they remind me a lot of coffee. They taste a lot like, for example, potting soil, like mushrooms. They just have a very earthy, dark flavor that's more comparable to coffee than, say, than any kind of tea, really. That is to say, that's certainly not, I don't think you'd ever mix the two up. In fact, if anything, you'd probably think it was some sort of, I don't know, compost related thing, which sounds disgusting, but it's really good. What's unique about Puerh is it's fermented, but not in the way, when people think fermentation, they usually think of alcohol. But really, sauerkraut's fermented, yogurt's fermented, a lot of things are fermented. What's neat about tea being fermented is that it doesn't make it sour, which is what we usually associate with sour or alcohol tasting. Instead, it actually mellows it out. A lot of the tannins, like none of the bitterness is really there at all. It doesn't taste acidic at all. And instead, what you end up with is something that's, I wouldn't call it sweet, but it's got a mild sweetness to it that's different from other kinds of teas. And the way they ferment them, they compress them into cakes, which are often beautiful looking. I mean, sometimes they look like really big, ornate chocolate bars. And other times they just look like somebody made a hockey puck out of leaves. But it's really cool looking. The wrapping is often neat and fun to collect. Unlike other teas, it doesn't really, instead of going bad, it gets better with time. Which is why the really old Puerh cakes are like really expensive. Largely because Mao destroyed a lot of Puerh cakes in the whole cultural revolution thing. Let's get rid of everything that's uniquely Chinese because reasons. But it's very unique. And it's the kind of brick tea, because it lasts a long time, it's very popular in like Mongolian and Tibetan cultures to make their forms of tea, which are usually more salty and not at all like what would I associate with Chinese, Japanese, Korean, aka what I would call Eastern tea culture, or with Indian, Middle Eastern, or European, which I would call Western tea culture. And I realize I'm making a sweeping generalization. I'm just saying people don't think a lot about the Tibetan and Mongolian cultures when it comes to tea, but it's very fascinating, and Puerh is definitely sort of at the center of that. So, unfortunately, unlike the previous iterations, I don't actually have any recommendations for Puerh because Puerh is very diverse and there's too much. There's too much to try out. I would recommend trying Puerh, and you can buy little tiny ones called Tuocha, which I recommend because they're a lot more affordable than just going ahead and buying a cake if you've never had any. But it is different. It's the kind that I know I don't own a tea pick. I just break it off with my hands and until I get what I want. But it is structurally and mechanically different from making any other kind of tea. It's not, stay away from anything that says it's bagged Puerh, for example, because it's not. If it is, it's going to be really substandard. You want to buy either the tuocha or cakes, and then you break off pieces. And in this case, because there's none of the acidity, you boil that water. You act like you're making soup, You get a full rolling boil. You steep it for 3 to 5 minutes. You can go overboard with Puerh, and it's not going to ruin your tea. But ultimately, I mean, there's a limit, obviously, but I'm just saying you can play a lot more faster with the rules. You're not going to have bitter tea if you go over by 30 seconds, or you're 10 degrees too hot, obviously, in that case. But yeah, if you want to experiment with Puerh, I highly recommend it. It's very unique, and I think for the winter season, there's fewer things better than a really dark, it's pitch black cup of Puerh tea. So that's all I got. I guess next time is going to be an announcement, a primer for another series. So like, share, subscribe, keep asking questions. Bye.